Hi everybody, I'm kind of skipping an intro, so if you don't know me, I don't know, look at my other videos. Look at my description. But this is the final video in my Qliphothic Visions series, where I'll be concluding with the last three qliphoth, being Satariel, Ghagiel, and Thaumiel. Now, I finished my Qliphothic initiation about, well now that it's March, I guess 2 months ago. It was an 11-month process for me. It was not as neat and tidy as one qlipha per month. It's not how that played out. It just so happened that it took 11 months. And it sort of averaged out to that, but it was not really intentional. These outer three qliphoth are hard for me to describe. A lot of my experiences, both in ritual and in state and in my mundane life, because they're just concepts that would take too long for me to explain in order to translate how my soul, my spirits, my God self, translated and experienced all of those concepts. So I just don't want to take away from what people can personally experience. That being said, I may share personal details here and there so you get some idea of examples of what I was going through, but a lot of this was a whirlwind for me, and I was simply just living it rather than recording it, so I really don't have as proficient notes as I did for previous qliphoth. Beginning with Satariel. Oh, and I want to mention before I really get into it that I did cross the abyss. For those who don't know, I did cross the abyss before reaching these three last qliphoth. Some people do it differently, where they skip the abyss and finish Thaumiel and then cross the abyss. I did not do that. I crossed the abyss from Ghagiel to Satariel. So that's what I chose to do. I'm glad I did. I'm glad I did because it makes the victory at Thaumiel that much sweeter. There's not a whole lot left to do afterwards, at least in regards to your qliphothic initiation. It's complete at that point. There's always more work to do, but at least you don't have to cross the abyss. So, beginning in Satariel, I had just crossed the abyss, and the abyss was tricky. I initially thought that everything had gone fine and I was just done with it. No, the abyss had other plans for me. So I dealt with that, and coming into Satariel, I was sort of like, fuck, I just need to get through this. I just need to finish this. And I knew I would, but it was just like, wow, this is really, I don't know what to expect after this. A lot of my trials in the previous qliphoth had been very intense for me. Psychologically, sometimes financially, like it was just socially sometimes. It was a lot. I don't regret any of it. I don't regret any of it. Could I have handled some of it differently? Maybe. Nowadays I probably would, but there's no use in regretting anything. Everything led me to where I am now, which I'm grateful for and I'm happy about. So, that's that for me. Satariel, I was really just like fucked up from the abyss. I'm just gonna state it like it was. I was fucked up from the abyss, and I was getting like bombarded with like all kinds of information and all kinds of like things going on in my life. I didn't really feel like they were bad. I just sort of was like, okay, here we go. Like, let's keep going. And I know this is just all part of it, so it's fine. I really was focused on the commitments I had made prior to my qliphothic journey because, Qliphothic is the Lord of Pacts, and I was sort of taking a hard look at my previous commitments before this journey. How much had I fulfilled? What pacts did I have active? What pacts did I want to make going forward? That's both in a literal sense and a more figurative sense. That was more about like taking a hard look at my life and being like, okay, I can't be a stripper forever. Like what the fuck am I? Where am I going? I can't do this and just dick around and distract myself from achieving what I want to achieve in this regard, at that regard, forever. That's not really how this is gonna go. This can't go this way. if I'm to do what I am here to do. So, I really had to assess that. It's a powerful qlipha. Satariel is a powerful qlipha for shifting perspective, at least through the exercises laid out in Qliphothic meditations. I want to also point out that, like, as I went down, and other people have told me they had a similar experience, as I descended through the Tree of Death, I found that a lot of my rituals became more personal. I was relying less on the book, and I sort of knew what the next qlipha would be about before I would even really, check back up on the book and like read up on it again. I would already sort of know, because I didn't really feel like a gap, in between each qlipha. I felt like I'd finish one and the next one would sort of just be there. So, whether I liked it or not. And that's sort of what my entire experience had been. I dealt with that. I dealt with the shifting of perspective, but I really had moments where I could evaluate exactly why, I'm doing this work. Because when you form a pact, when you form a commitment, you should have a reason. You should have a reason. And I really got the chance to actually reflect on why I began this qliphothic initiation in the first place. And that's like an answer that I feel like has changed throughout my journey, and we can talk more about that later. But to the extent that I really began it because I was researching it, I was interested in it, and my spirits had pushed me to do it. I'm glad that I heeded that request, because my initiation did sync up with a lot of different astrological events that did intensify things, but I'm grateful to have had that correlation so I could really see what I was feeling manifest in the mundane around me as well. Did it always correlate like that? No, but a lot of the time it did for some big events. It calmed down, after the abyss. I feel like it calmed down in that regard, but it revved up spiritually. And so I had a lot of personal revelations. There was a lot of things from previous qliphoth that actually came up in Satariel. When I was in the abyss, echoes of Ghagiel and sort of this foreshadowing of Thaumiel, and which makes sense. It's in this like center pillar of the tree. Were just sort of echoing around me, which made the crossing the abyss very confusing. But a lot of that I could process better in Satariel. It was sort of, I could segment it into different modes of understanding that helped me a lot. You see where this gets sort of innocuous and sort of like philosophical at some point. It gets difficult to describe. My visions were a lot darker, I guess, when it comes to like my UPG and my personal experience in state. I remember seeing lots of like ravines and caverns, and Lucifuge to me looked like a very pitch black shape of a shadow. Is just sort of how he came to me. I really did enjoy his presence. And so yeah, that's the furthest one back for me to remember right now that I haven't already talked about, so I apologize if that's a bit vague. It's just these concepts get weird. Ghagiel, also called the Hinderers, is the next qlipha, and Ghagiel is ruled by Baal-Zebub. I do not call him Beelzebub. That's just like so many reasons why I don't use that name. His name is Baal-Zebub. That was fucking hard. Hindered I was. Yeah, I felt like I was sort of on this fucking treadmill or hamster wheel for a while. I really just didn't know what I needed to do or where I needed to direct that energy. I had energy to direct. I just was like, what the fuck do I do? And I was in sort of this state of inertia, this Eight of Swords kind of vibe, if you're a tarot person. Like, just like, I can get out of this. I know I can get out of this. I'm just sort of mentally in a rut, and I don't know what to do. And I was sort of cycling through things I thought I had abandoned, like prior to the abyss. Things that I thought that were completely resolved and had been worked on and had been improved upon. But this was sort of the final wrap up. This was sort of the final, like, all right, be honest with yourself about when these things come back up. What the fuck is your plan for when they do mentally? What the fuck is your plan for pushing past this and leaving that behind as you move into godhood, that was just hard because it demanded a lot of follow through, right? It demanded a lot of follow through in the physical world. And though that hadn't been a problem for me really before in this journey, I found that I was being challenged by this deep past self of me that used to put things off, or used to believe I couldn't accomplish something, or I don't know, have this like pattern of beginning things and not finishing them, which is a huge thing for people with, undiagnosed ADHD, as I was. But but like it was sort of that was coming back to, not to haunt me, but to confront me, so that I could deal with it and resolve it. This wasn't really a trial so much as showing myself, proving to myself that I had worked past these things, that I was ready to live beyond these things and ascend beyond them, or descend beyond them, however you want to conceptualize it. And so and also being in Ghagiel, you're sort of in the suspense of, am I ready for Thaumiel? You're in that suspense of, am I ready? I want to be ready. I want it to be right. I want it, me being a Virgo, I still always want things to be perfect. I know they can't be all the time, nor do they need to be, but I still want it. I still want things to be as perfect as possible, as I can possibly make them, because I'm never satisfied with anything I do, which is, just part of being creative, and part of, I think, this path where you're constantly improving. It's just what you do. But once I had to admit to myself, there was nothing more I could really fucking do in Ghagiel. Everything that I had done had been done. And it was time for Thaumiel. Thaumiel is probably the most difficult qliphoth for me to describe, besides maybe the abyss. If you want to count the abyss as a qliphoth. I know some people don't. But Thaumiel was... first of all, it was incredible. But also, I was... it was probably the last sort of... I would say that these last outer qliphoth are less of trials and more of challenges. And for me, the challenge, I really felt like I was offered this path of sacrifice through Malach, where I would have to give something up, and live this more sort of conventional life, this life that was potentially more conformity. And I'm not trying to characterize Malach as those things. I'm just saying that's sort of like what I felt. And then the path of Satan, which was, my original plan, following my passion, going against the grain. It's not easy at all, especially if you want to be above the poverty line. It's certainly not fucking easy to be a creative person, or somebody who doesn't fit the mold or whatever. And I I was in a position where I thought that a door had closed and that I had to find another way, that I would have to tread on one path while seeking an avenue back into the other one temporarily, just because my material needs were in a particular state that I had to meet. I had to satiate in some way. And then it's almost like as soon as I could let go of the desire of it, of course, I should know better as a magician. As soon as I let go of the desire, what happened? The path of Satan opened up for me again. And I grew to understand that these were not exactly separate paths, but conflicting and yet complementary realities that one might have to tread realistically in life. So and that I tread fairly well if I let myself, if I get over myself in some regard. I think in the past I was someone who was like, oh, I am never gonna work in this sort of professional hoity-toity environment or whatever, or I pushed myself into certain academia to achieve a certain status, and then I gave that up again, and it was like this whole roller coaster throughout my like career and my life. And I've sort of found this place where I don't really have to be quite the extremes that I positioned myself into, because I didn't really see where each of these things could benefit me. Now I'm in a place where I can be true to myself, and I don't have to give up livelihood. I don't have to completely sacrifice fucking everything. Now, are there compromises that had to be made? Are there realistic things that had to be put into place for that to happen? Yes. I had to make some changes. I had to cut some costs. I had to adjust how I felt about certain things in my life to make space for more things. And what was incredible was that transition, sometimes there were people brought to me in Satariel or Ghagiel or even Thaumiel. There were times where I was reunited with people in Thaumiel for particular purposes. And it was just interesting to me because I had started this journey being very individualistic, as one does, and the left-hand path is just natural. I don't necessarily see it as exclusively a bad thing. It depends on where you take it. But I began this very personally, and actually, upon completion of my initiation, I realized what value it has communally, as much as it does personally. That doesn't take away from my personal ascension. It just means that I don't feel like, it's sort of like when you ascend in a certain point in your personal growth, you really don't have the same sense of competition with other people that you used to, which as a Satanist I certainly enjoyed from time to time, and I still enjoy a little bit of friendly competition, but I see it for what it is. It's simply a game. It's not something I really get personally affected by. And I never really like admitted to myself how competitive I used to be. And a little bit of competition is good. It's motivating, but I really began to see like there's no need to compare myself to others. I can admire other people and aspire to have, the things they may have, but I need to do it my way. There's no reason why I should ever, and I've always known this, but it was something that I could really feel that was solidified in my being, which was very secure, which is nice to know. And I'm only human, there are times when I may envy people, but I try to turn it into admiration, because envy really just drains you. It just exhausts you. So like I don't think it's bad. I just think if you turn it into productive admiration as opposed to like a weird obsession with somebody, then you can succeed as much as they do, if not more. You don't have to, I don't know. I find a lot of people on social media, and that's why I've avoided certain platforms, were like desperate to put other people as like a framework to follow, and that I found that very disturbing in quote unquote left hand path spaces. Where people were just copy paste, and there's a certain organization that we could blame for that, but it's not just them. I really feel like there should be a line drawn, that you have to have this individual journey before you bring it into community, and before you understand the weight it can have on people who are not awakened to the black flame. And by that I mean awakened to their own godhood separate from source. That doesn't mean you can't connect to nature, connect to the world, and connect to other people. You absolutely still can. You absolutely still can tap into that, but you are separate from the demiurge forever once you've awakened the black flame in truth, not just done some spiritual bypassy chant you know. Like any number of these things I see just to bypass this work, and I've seen it done with the qliphoth as well. I just want to really emphasize that this is to be your experience. It is helpful to have frameworks to operate from, so you know that you're not completely bullshitting yourself, you know, hence why people write works like the ones I've referenced to do this. But eventually it becomes your own experience. It should. It should be that from the get-go if you can help it. I I want to add that I really didn't. I could not have imagined how much the qliphoth would affect me. I could not have imagined that. I was like, yep, people say that about every path working thing. People say this about every spiritual thing, that it's going to be life changing, that's going to be this, that, the other thing. It's going to bring this to you, take that away from you, etc. And usually, you know, it does have an impact. Like rituals do have an impact on you, especially if you're consistent with them. But never have I added anything to this caliber, you know, before. I really, at times it was like a rush. It was like a thrill. It was certainly an adventure the entire time. And sometimes I just didn't have the option to slow down. Which brings me to my next point, that if you choose to do this, do not feel like you have to finish it quickly. Do not feel like you have to go at any particular pace. Each qliphoth will affect you differently and will manifest in your life, in your personhood differently. And you should leave space, however you do, whether it's in time, whether it's in consciousness. You should leave space for each qliphoth to, what I say, how I say it, is a hit on the day side, you know, hit on the day side, because it really does impact you. And so if you just sort of don't make space for that consciously, it can overwhelm you in the physical. I'm grateful that for the most part I created space. There were times where I was ambitious and I just sort of like crashed into the next thing. But you know, sometimes that's what was needed. Sometimes that's what was needed. It's expected to have some tower moments throughout this journey. That is necessity. This is a path of destruction before it is creation. As you know, literally you are moving away from creation in this exercise. You're moving creation through this path work. You're moving away from creation through this path working, and then finding yourself in a position to completely create from what has been destroyed. That is the essence of this. That is the, you know, main takeaway I have from it. And it's honestly very daunting. Sometimes you can feel like you're starting over again, in a sense. It's sort of like, if you know tarot, I'm going to use tarot as an example. The ace is the seed, right, in a suit. The ace is the very seed. It's the first card in the suit. It's the number 1. The number 9 is where it's actually complete. And the number 10, which is numerologically 1 and 0, the digits 1 and 0, is a new phase. It's a new chapter or a new book even. It's where you're beginning something entirely new, built from the foundation of the previous 9 cards, right? So I feel very much that's what the qliphothic initiation is. It's an initiation. I think a lot of people misunderstand this work and seem to think that, oh, I'm initiated through the qliphoth, that means I'm done with it. No, you're not done with them, because you've initiated through them, which means those currents are now in your life. These are things that you will be using moving forward. And so that's why it's been important for me to record it in any way I can, even in, you know, YouTube videos or during this time where I was more like just doing rather than recording. I did use Instagram to sort of just keep track of what I was thinking and feeling at each moment. I unlocked a lot of different powers, skills, and different pathways for me to choose from upon completion of my qliphothic journey. These paths were revealed to me throughout the abyss into the latter qliphoth. So of those paths, I never expected I would be on any of them. Number one, I would never expect I would be on pretty much any of them. And then some of them were expanding upon previous knowledge in ways I didn't know were possible, which was very refreshing for me, because sometimes, as someone who's like done occult shit for a long ass time, let's just say I've been practicing witchcraft for over a decade. It's sometimes I feel like I run out of material. Sometimes I feel like I run out of things to learn, and it's wonderful to have my path expanded without having to change who I am or my positions on, where I stand spiritually, but yet expand beyond what I've had access to previously. So I have had doors open for me in certain avenues with my ancestors that are interesting, certain avenues involving different kinds of entities I haven't worked with before, and certain avenues involving the dead, which I had always avoided previously. So that has been exciting. That has been something I've been working with and working on. I've sort of narrowed it down into chunks to focus on developing a foundation for each one at a time before I start mixing them all. That's the thing about completing something, is that you're now a beginner at something else. And that is something that I do enjoy. But it's been a long time since I've felt that, so it's sort of an unfamiliar feeling for me. But I have so many new skills, magically, spiritually, emotionally, from my qliphothic initiation that make this new work easier to do, faster to accelerate at, and just so more enjoyable and more incorporated into my existing practice, which I appreciate. If you've been on my Patreon, you've seen me develop sort of Citra Aqua candle magic. You've seen me blend a lot of what people keep just to the book with my existing practice, my existing knowledge. In a future post, I'll be discussing how I've been blending, electoral astrology and planetary magic with the qliphothic spheres, with candle magic, with poppet magic, with crystals. These are things that I combine all together. And sigils. These are things that I might put all in one working to do something more complex. So that's how I end up working. I like to layer my knowledge on top of itself. And that's sort of where you get the advanced witchcraft that everybody is looking for in books. It's not found in books. I'm sorry. It comes from mastering what you've learned and then putting it together in a way that makes sense. If you're stuck, this is the beauty of being on the left-hand path. You're not stuck in a rigid tradition. You are creating your own. I found that valuable. I think that, one last thing. Before I forget, are you a god after finishing your initiation? Are you a god now? I don't know. I definitely feel closer to godhood. I feel further away from myself prior to that, if that makes sense. I feel further away from my mundane, purely human self, although I have a better understanding of my human self. And I did joke around when I reached Thaumiel, a lot of people, more than usual, reached out to me to tell me they were having dreams about me. I don't ask people what they dream about me because I may not like the answer, if you catch my drift. But I joked around and said, of course you're dreaming about me. I'm a god now. So Do I think, you know, you get to walk around and act like you're an actual god? No, I think you're still confined to your human body, and thus you are still in some capacity human, and everything that your god self receives is translated through being human. So there's room for error. I do think that it is a pretty crucial step for a lot of people to finish this initiation if they want to achieve a full severance from the source and become their own deific entity, you know, in some capacity, however you conceptualize that. For me, that may not be as literal as other people conceptualize it. But I am truly grateful for this experience. I feel a little sad that it's over, but I'm also so grateful that I can look back and use these lessons to further myself in the future. I hope that this was interesting. I hope that this inspired people to, you know, research the qliphoth and see if it's a journey that they want to pursue. I hope that it inspired other people to consider other path workings to commit to in their spiritual work. I think it is worth doing. It can be hard, it can be challenging, and I am someone that really struggles with long-term commitment. So I'm very proud of myself for completing it and feeling that sense of accomplishment being done. I'd like to explore it more in the future with like where I'd like to take it, what I'd like to reflect on it, but I think that would be taking the form of something written, just because I think for YouTube and things I want to move on to current things. But thank you so much to everyone who has been with me through that journey and sort of watched me go through all the things I was going through, and all the changes I made and all of that. So thank you so much. I'm open to questions in the comments, although sometimes I don't answer things specifically because I want people to challenge themselves to seek out the answers. I don't think it's always my place to interject in everyone's spiritual path. It's just not always appropriate. That being said, thank you so much for your support. Thank you for sitting through a super long video of me rambling about talking to demons and descending through hell. But I'm glad you're here. I'll see y'all next week. Bye-bye.